never thought my marriage would reach this point. My name is James, and I'm a 32-year-old software engineer. My wife, Emma, and I have been together for 4 years, 2 years as a married couple. She's smart, kind, and ambitious, qualities I've always admired. But the last few months have thrown everything I believed about us into doubt. 2 months ago, Emma blindsided me with a suggestion I could never have anticipated. She came to me after dinner one night, sat down with an unnerving calmness, and proposed something that turned my world upside down: an open relationship. She said it was to spice things up. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't angry, at least not immediately. I was confused, stunned even. I'd known Emma for years, and this was so far removed from who I thought she was. I've read stories about open marriages. For some it works. For many others, it ends in disaster, heartbreak, mistrust, and regret. I wasn't about to gamble our relationship on something so volatile. I told her no, firmly but not unkindly. I explained that while I was open to exploring ways to strengthen and invigorate our marriage, I wasn't willing to involve other people. Marriage, to me, is sacred, a partnership between two people. Emma didn't respond much that night, but I could tell she was disappointed. I've rarely denied her anything. Perhaps that was part of the problem. At first, I blamed myself for rejecting her idea so quickly. I wondered if I should have been more understanding. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd mishandled the situation. But the more I thought about it, the more questions bubbled to the surface. Why had she brought this up in the first place? Was I failing her in some way? Was there something wrong with our marriage? I decided to approach the subject again, but Emma's work schedule made it nearly impossible. She's a consultant for a multinational company and often works odd hours to accommodate different time zones. I have a demanding job too, but mine keeps me within a fixed schedule. The time we used to spend together started to dwindle. About 2 weeks after her proposal, I made an effort to reconnect. I came home early, cooked her favorite meal, lasagna, and set up a cozy dinner. When she walked in, the surprise brought a genuine smile to her face. For the first time in weeks, it felt like we were on the same page again. I thought it was the perfect moment to revisit the conversation, but as soon as I brought up her suggestion about opening our marriage, her mood shifted. She accused me of manipulating her by setting a trap. I was taken aback. Manipulation? All I wanted was to understand where she was coming from. I couldn't hide my frustration and blurted out the question that had been gnawing at me. Am I not enough for you? Her initial reaction was silence, but eventually she opened up. She told me about the younger colleagues at her office, interns fresh out of college, full of stories about their wild parties and hookup culture. She admitted their tales had sparked something in her, a longing for excitement and freedom that our life didn't seem to provide. It's like they're living in color, and I'm stuck in black and white, she said. Her words stung, but I tried to understand. I told her about my own past, how I'd lived that life in my 20s, the parties, the casual flings, the endless pursuit of thrills. I told her how empty it had all felt, how meeting her had brought me the stability and meaning I never knew I needed. I poured my heart out, explaining that I wanted to grow old with her, to build a family and a life together. She seemed to listen. She nodded, agreed with my points, and assured me she understood. By the end of the conversation, I thought we'd reached an understanding. I even offered to revisit the idea of an open relationship if it truly meant that much to her. She declined and said she didn't want to risk what we had. But something wasn't right. In the days that followed, Emma became distant. She started lashing out over small things, mocking me for being stuck in the past and too traditional. Her words were cutting, especially since I didn't see myself that way. I'm not some out-of-touch relic. I follow trends, watch popular shows, and enjoy new music. When I asked her if she was still upset about the open marriage, her response was infuriatingly vague. Maybe. It was like she didn't know or didn't care how her behavior was affecting me. And then there was her work schedule. What had once been a few late nights a month suddenly became the norm. She started coming home well past midnight, or not at all. When I confronted her, she brushed it off, saying she was working toward a promotion and needed to prove herself. Emma's always been ambitious, and I've always supported her career. But this felt different. Something wasn't adding up, and I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. The late nights became a pattern. Emma was now regularly coming home well after midnight, sometimes not until dawn. I tried to be understanding, telling myself it was because of her demanding job. But doubt started to creep in. Was she telling me the truth? I didn't want to be that guy, the paranoid husband jumping to conclusions, but her behavior was becoming harder to ignore. Last week, something happened that tipped the scales. I got home earlier than usual, around 7 p.m., and decided to surprise her by making lasagna again. It's her favorite. Cooking kept me busy, and I found myself getting excited about the evening. I spent over an hour perfecting the meal, plating it just the way Emma likes it, and setting the table. But when I messaged her to ask when she'd be home, her response was deflating, late, probably after midnight. My enthusiasm fizzled. I waited for her for a while, trying to distract myself with video games, but the house felt empty. Around 11 p.m., I had an impulse. Why not pick her up from work? It wasn't something I'd done before, but it seemed like a thoughtful gesture. Plus, I missed her. Maybe this would be a chance to reconnect. I drove to her office. It's a standalone building, easy to spot, and I parked across the street where I could see the entrance. The area was quiet. With shops closing and the streets emptying out, I waited. 30 minutes passed, then 45. By 12:30 a.m., there was still no sign of her. I started to worry. I decided to go up to the reception desk and check if she was still in the building. The receptionist, a young man who looked like he'd pulled one too many night shifts, was helpful but firm. "Emma left hours ago," he said. His words hit me like a punch. My first thought was that I must have missed her. Maybe she'd left while I was driving to the office. But my gut told me something else was going on. I rushed home, my mind racing with questions. But when I arrived, she wasn't there either. Her phone was offline and she hadn't seen my last message. Panic set in, not the kind fueled by jealousy, but genuine fear for her safety. Had something happened to her? My imagination spiraled through worst-case scenarios. I waited, fighting the urge to call her colleagues or the police. Around 6 a.m., the sound of the front door jolted me awake. I ran to the bedroom and found Emma sleeping soundly, as if nothing had happened. My relief quickly gave way to frustration. Where had she been? When she woke up later that morning, already dressed for work, I confronted her. She told me she'd come home around 3 a.m. after a late meeting with an Asian client. I asked when she'd left the office, and her response was chilling. Around 2:30. Her timeline didn't add up. Either the receptionist had lied to me, or Emma had. I wanted to press her further, but I was exhausted and still shaken. I let it go for the moment. Later that day, Emma called me at work. Her tone was hesitant. "Were you at my office last night?" she asked. My stomach sank. The receptionist must have told her I'd been there. I decided to be honest. "Yes," I said. "I went to pick you up. I was worried." She was silent for a moment, then explained that she'd left the office earlier in the afternoon to attend a client meeting on the other side of the city. "It was at the U.S. branch," she clarified. "I stayed there for Zoom calls with their team in Asia." Her explanation felt plausible, but something about the way she said it didn't sit right with me. Why hadn't she mentioned the meeting before? Why did her timeline still feel off? I wanted to believe her, but the doubt in my mind was growing louder by the day. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The inconsistencies in Emma's stories were gnawing at me, but every time I tried to address them, she brushed me off. Her behavior was growing more erratic, and our conversations had dwindled to transactional exchanges. For the most part, we were just two people sharing the same house but living entirely separate lives. 2 days ago, something happened that shattered any lingering doubts I had. It started innocently enough. Emma was on the phone with her mother, discussing her health. My mother-in-law has been dealing with kidney issues for years, and her recent test results hadn't been encouraging. Out of concern, I grabbed Emma's phone to ask her mom about her routine and medication, while Emma lay on the bed. As I held the phone, something in me clicked. Her phone was unlocked, and I saw a notification pop up from her chat. It was a message that read, "Looking forward to the fun ride later." My heart stopped. I excused myself, walking into the bathroom while still talking to her mother. I locked the door and, with trembling hands, began scrolling through her messages. What I found confirmed my worst fears. The chats revealed that Emma had been seeing multiple colleagues outside of work. The messages were explicit, the kind that made me sick to my stomach. I couldn't believe my eyes. My wife, the woman I loved and trusted, was having affairs. The more I read, the worse it got. Her gallery was filled with photos of her, in compromising positions with those same colleagues. There was no ambiguity, no room for excuses. I forwarded the most incriminating images and messages to my own email, then deleted any trace of it from her phone. My mind was racing, alternating between fury and heartbreak. By then, Emma realized something was wrong. She started banging on the bathroom door, demanding her phone back. "What are you doing in there?" she yelled. I didn't respond. I couldn't. After a few minutes, I handed her the phone without a word and locked myself back inside. I needed to breathe, to gather my thoughts. When I finally came out, she was sitting on the edge of the bed, her face pale. She asked me what I'd been doing, but I ignored her. I grabbed my car keys and walked out of the house, her voice trailing behind me. I couldn't stay there. Not after what I'd just seen. I drove aimlessly for a while before ending up at a hotel mentioned in one of the chats. I wasn't there to cause a scene. I just wanted to see if she'd actually show up. I found a seat in the dimly lit lobby, nursing drink after drink as I waited. The alcohol dulled my anger but did little to ease the ache in my chest. She was supposed to meet her fun ride at 5 p.m. I'd arrived at 3, hoping to confirm my suspicions. Hours passed and she didn't show. I started to wonder if she'd caught wind of my plan, or if they'd changed their meeting place. By 7 p.m., I was several drinks in, my vision blurred. When I finally saw her walk through the doors, time seemed to stop. There she was, registering at the front desk like it was the most natural thing in the world. The sight of her sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. I got up, unsteady on my feet, and approached her. I tapped her on the shoulder. When she turned around, her eyes widened in shock. "Good luck with your fun ride," I muttered. Though my words were likely slurred from the alcohol, her face turned pale as she stammered something about explaining everything. I didn't give her the chance. I pulled my arm free from her grasp and walked out, leaving her standing there. I don't remember much after that. I must have hailed a cab because the next thing I knew, I was at my friend Ryan's doorstep, pounding on the door before collapsing on the ground. He helped me inside and I passed out on his couch. When I woke up the next afternoon, Ryan was sitting across from me, holding a plate of food and a glass of lemonade. He listened patiently as I poured out everything, the lies, the affairs, the photos. I felt numb, like I was living someone else's nightmare. Ryan didn't mince words. "You need to take control of this situation," he said. "Freeze your accounts. Change your passwords. And for the love of God, get an STD test." The thought hadn't even occurred to me. But he was right, as much as it hurt. I couldn't let Emma drag me down any further. I had to start protecting myself. Waking up that afternoon on Ryan's couch felt like emerging from a bad dream, except the nightmare wasn't over. The first thing I did was check my phone, which had died the night before. I plugged it in, and as soon as it powered up, the screen flooded with notifications. Over 100 missed calls, dozens of voicemails, and countless texts from Emma. Each one was more desperate than the last. I didn't care. I ignored all of them and immediately blocked her on every platform. Whatever excuses or pleas she had to offer, I wasn't interested. She had made her choices, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate me into staying. Ryan, ever the practical one, pushed me to act fast. He helped me freeze all our joint accounts, change the passwords on anything she might access, and make arrangements to retrieve the rest of my belongings from the house. He also urged me to get an STD test, something I hadn't even considered. It was a sobering reminder of how much damage her recklessness could have caused. Thankfully, the tests came back clean, despite my efforts to distance myself. Emma didn't back down. She began reaching out to Ryan, begging him to mediate. She claimed she still loved me, that the affairs meant nothing, and that she'd only been seeking validation. "I just wanted to feel desirable again," she said, as if that justified betraying everything we'd built together. A few days later, I sent Ryan to the house to collect my things. I figured it would be easier for both of us if I avoided any direct confrontation. But Emma was home when he arrived. She broke down in tears, begging him to convince me to give her another chance. She told him she'd quit her job, unable to face her colleagues after the rumors spread. Apparently, the interns she'd been involved with had shared explicit photos of her with other employees. Her once pristine reputation was in shambles. Ryan told me everything when he got back. According to Emma, The whole mess had started as harmless flirting. The younger interns had made her feel attractive, showering her with compliments and attention. One thing led to another, and she found herself in a cycle of reckless behavior. The interns exploited her financially, treating her like a bank while she spiraled further into their toxic world. When I heard this, I didn't feel pity. If anything, I was angrier. She claimed she'd wanted to confess earlier and had brought up the idea of an open marriage to ease her guilt. But that wasn't true. By the time she'd made that proposal, the damage was already done. The open marriage wasn't a suggestion. It was an attempt to justify her infidelity. As the divorce proceedings began, Emma resisted every step of the way. She refused to sign the papers, shifted blame onto me, and even accused me of encouraging her behavior. Her claim that I'd made her feel like she needed to gain experience outside of our marriage. It was absurd. Thankfully, she had no evidence to support her lies. Her resistance only grew as she realized she couldn't win. She began demanding alimony, citing emotional distress caused by the divorce. The audacity was mind-blowing. If anyone deserved compensation, it was me for the betrayal, the lies, and the months of gaslighting. My lawyer assured me that her claims were baseless and wouldn't hold up in court. The situation took another turn when Emma's sister, Sophia, reached out to me. She begged me to reconsider, painting Emma as a victim of her circumstances. She told me how the gossip had ruined Emma's chances of finding a new job. Her name was now synonymous with scandal, thanks to the photos circulating among her professional network. Sophia insisted that Emma was depressed, struggling to cope with the fallout of her actions. "She's broken," she said, as if that absolved her of everything she'd done to me. I told Sophia the same thing I'd been telling myself. Emma had made her choices. She had thrown away a stable, loving marriage for a fleeting sense of excitement. Now she had to live with the consequences. Despite all this, I knew I couldn't let her chaos consume my life. Ryan was a constant source of support, reminding me to focus on the future instead of dwelling on the past. It wasn't easy. The betrayal still haunted me, but I knew I deserved better. Slowly but surely, I began to rebuild. It's been 2 months since I walked away from Emma and the mess she created. The divorce proceedings are still ongoing, delayed by her constant resistance, but my lawyer assures me it's only a matter of time before everything is finalized. In the meantime, I've been trying to piece my life back together. The first thing I did was cut back on the drinking. It was tempting to drown my sorrows, but I knew it wouldn't solve anything. Instead, I started channeling my energy into healthier habits, working out, eating right, and staying busy at work. Slowly but surely, I began to feel like myself again. Emma, of course, hasn't stopped trying to contact me. Despite being blocked on every platform, she's found ways to send messages through mutual acquaintances, pleading for another chance. "I've changed," she claims. "We can start fresh." But her words mean nothing to me now. She even went as far as to tell Ryan that the affairs meant nothing and that she had been lost and confused. Her desperation only solidified my resolve. Every now and then, I hear updates about her situation. Apparently, the scandal at her old job has made it nearly impossible for her to find a new position. Those interns, her so-called friends, had not only tarnished her reputation at work, but had also spread the gossip to other companies in the industry. Her name is now synonymous with scandal, and she's struggling to make ends meet. Her sister, Sophia, continues to plead her case. She's reached out to me several times, painting Emma as a victim of her own mistakes. She's really sorry, Sophia says. She's been through so much: depression, financial struggles, you name it. She's a different person now, but I can't bring myself to care. I've given enough of myself to Emma. I refuse to give her any more. The divorce battle has been exhausting, especially with her insistence on playing the victim. She's even tried to demand alimony, citing emotional distress caused by the separation. It's laughable. If anyone deserves compensation, it's me for the betrayal, the lies, and the months of emotional manipulation. Thankfully, my lawyer is confident that her claims won't hold up in court. I've realized something important through all of this. I deserve better. I deserve a partner who values loyalty and honesty, someone who wouldn't throw away a stable, loving relationship for fleeting excitement. It's taken time, but I'm learning to let go of the anger and focus on building a future that doesn't include Emma. Ryan has been a rock through all of this, and I've officially moved in with him as his roommate. It's a practical arrangement, but it's also been a source of emotional support. He's constantly reminding me that I did the right thing, even when doubt creeps in. On the tough days, I look back at the photos and messages I found on Emma's phone, not out of spite, but as a reminder of why I chose to walk away. The road ahead isn't going to be easy. There are still moments when the pain of betrayal hits me like a wave, but I'm learning to navigate those feelings. Every step forward is a step away from the toxicity of my old life. To anyone reading this who's going through something similar, I can only say this: don't lose yourself in someone else's chaos. You deserve to be happy, respected and loved, and sometimes walking away is the only way to find those things.